So many old and some new faces here. Um, you proceed by quotation, or so the reviewer is told. This is sound. It's what's there. The work is what there is, or what's left. And in a way, I'm asked to review her life. But of course, the work isn't all that's left. I am here, and my brother Isaiah. I'm a writer, and she was a writer, and so there will always be a part of me that examines the work to locate the person. I never met Nabokov or Bellow, but I know them, or the best of them. This is also sound. The best is what goes on the page, and perhaps this is even more true of poets than novelists, given the inimical intimacy of the form and the choice. But she was my mother, and this is where the difference lies. It's extraordinary to me now, reading her, because I was actually there when most of it was written, playing with my Lego around her feet. In those days, she liked to stand at a window to write. Later, irritating the piano at the end of the corridor. Later still, having youthfully solemn sexual dramas over the telephone. By then, her headphones would be on. This is important because although I was a child and didn't feel the weight of words keenly, lines such as "Life stuns into June gold, for these are the fourfold petals of the marsh marigold. Unfastened, they die, withered in fullness of light. Caltha palustris, or cups of kings, you cannot help me now. Frail day spirals as hung pine stars, more dark than night. They breathe the green truth eternal. Stopped sap sings the failed bravura of men. Adagio molto, light indifferent, moves among the moving trees and days that go from me. Quickened sepals pull at life, wild defiance at their heart. They trace the path of the young to come through. These dead stems raise a last sublime, a mourning face, and yellow petals burn into colours from their time. Lost as moments of the asphodel, they come to me, no ease from fire and the downbeat heart of man. And lines such as, what road did I come by? Poetry leads to a locked door, and at the last deserts the body it has used. You come to me at the threshold after 7 days, and you come as a faithless woman. Though the sun-coloured iris hurts, it breaks towards sunlight. Caltha palustris, unearthed, closes only to the dark. The body will fight to the death for its own dignity, while the mind, more able to imagine a walled-up tomb than a room with a locked door, the eternity of one and the time of the other, where the mind, freewheeling, can recall only the absurd. I sat once with my back to another door, learning Greek for the first time, and the last time learning Greek. Then you came with cups of kings, you cannot help me now. Let's go on together, turn and turn about. I will make the songs, and you shall grind them out. These lines take me back instantly to when I first heard them, even sometimes to where I was standing, and indeed what I was holding, when she read them to me. And why should I remember that, if the work isn't worth it?
There is no way to prove to anyone that my poetry will last, not even to myself. At times, when I abandon the past, there is nothing to live for. Then I am left without hope, without despair. I cannot see where the poems will come from, without the narrative voice of their beginning, for their structure bears the sum total of my life and everything I have believed in, enclosed fast in an early interval of locked, unending fear. Beyond horizon and the mind's span, drawn from depths of exhausted memory, controlled, impossible want waits on me.
Well, I can tell you the poetry will survive. You will be read. Plug, or Plug's my pet name for her. She liked to claim that this stemmed from her ability to plug everything up. And that may be true, I don't recall, but more likely it came about because a childhood speech impediment caused sudden plosive sounds to erupt from my throat. Mum, love, lug, above, plug. Anyway, plug it was. There were so many wonderful stories I could tell you. She was such a vivacious soul during my early years. And later, when depression gripped her, our relationship became, for a time, a deeper one. But I guess we must boil it down to a few poignant moments. So I'll not tell you about her embarrassment at mistaking Messiaen for Handel. In fairness, her mind was elsewhere, 300 years elsewhere. Or the hilarity that ensued when, to cope with a sick cat's bladder problem, I resorted to stealing toilet paper en masse from my school. Or even about the time Isaiah returned from Vietnam and his suitcase turned out to contain a preposterously large insect that had intercontinentally hitched a ride. The words "die" and "you bastard" were used, as well as the heel of a shoe. No, these are all good, and there are many more. But I think the two most perfect moments, or at least the ones that stay with me and inform my heart of who I am, are these. Gertrude Falk was a character. Two others shared the Nobel Prize based on her research. She was Professor Emeritus at UCL and a fabulously aloof old Jew. It's fair to say I adored her from the start. She and my mother had a very serious relationship. Talks, tea, tragedies. But when she was with me, Gertrude unleashed her quietly anarchic side. I'd ply her with red wine and we'd laugh and argue about the default stupidity of people, volcanoes, the war, natural selection, UFOs, horticulture, Shakespeare, languages and Jewishness. Of course, Jewishness. Usually we'd be sobered up to meet with Brenda, but once we got carried away. We both, Gertrude 81, me 31, looked suitably shamefaced until my mother said, "Gertrude, if you were 50 years younger, you could be my daughter." It was one of the great moments of my life. And then this, I was briefly playing jazz piano in a restaurant in Bayswater that has still not been replaced, I must unsorrowfully add, after nearly a decade. And Brenda came to both hear me and enjoy a free meal. I don't remember what I was playing, probably something Bill Evans-esque or Errol Garner-esque, but the people on the next table were complaining about the amplification, but not loudly enough for me to notice. Brenda noticed though, and when I'd finished my set and sat down beside her, said pointedly, "Some people have absolutely no taste." I also always loved her resolute, refusal to accept that her postcode was NW80AR. She would always say that it was NW80AR, as in the oar of a boat. A poet for the little things. It should also be mentioned, her looks. She was a very beautiful woman. Her grandson, Eli, whom she only met a handful of times before the end, once pointed at the TV and shouted "Nana." And on the screen was the beautiful actress Courtney Cox. Her voice, too, was a source of life, I think. The salutary mid-sentence lilt, followed by the contrived contralto looping drop. Most of you here know me, if not only as Brenda's son, then as an opera singer. Of course, I was studying when we lived together. In a sense, she learnt alongside me. And you'd be surprised the interest she took in voice. We'd watch and discuss Orson Welles' Macbeth and how he cadenced each speech. She was an avid Domingo fan, although, like a true connoisseur, she preferred Aragon in Tosca, and would often listen to Bach, Elgar, Mahler, Eva Cassidy, Bob Dylan, Herbert Howells, and many, many more. When I was duly awarded the Howells Prize at the Royal College of Music, she was in attendance and stayed the whole day. She didn't congratulate me or kiss me, but she did something she never did. She bought me a drink in the bar, and I knew she was proud, and she knew that I knew. I recently took a trip to the Hollies, a place she loved with abandon. It's much the same as when she took me and Isaiah there as children. I hope it doesn't change. Her spirit is there, if it is anywhere, and her spirit is quite a spirit. A friend remarked recently that I must miss her terribly, and I thought, of course. But the truth is, she's all over my study, on my shelves, on my desk. She's in the faces of her grandchildren and in the phrases they use. So how can I truly miss her? She's still here. But it does surprise me how much she can be suddenly on the mind. I was on my way back from Marrakesh recently with my family, and I thought, she never flew. She never experienced that simple miracle of human invention, being above. She only went abroad once with me to Amsterdam,
by Jetfoil, where I was working as a boy singer at the Opera House and she was my chaperone. We took canal trips and visited the Rijksmuseum, but not Anne Frank's house. That was too close to the heart. Being entombed and writing was something she came to know all too well. I made her alternately laugh, frown, scowl, shake her head, laugh, cringe, look resignedly at the floor, look steadfastly out of the window, and finally laugh when, on a 3-hour train journey across the famously flat Dutch landscape, I tirelessly shouted, "Watchtower!" if we passed any structure over 2 stories high. We also got fabulously lost in the red light district, got almost sick on white chocolate, and petted the tame pigeons that seemed to enchant her. And I guess it would be enchanting, with nothing to compare. And so, Brenda Williams, poet, campaigner, my mother, I wish to offer you thanks and love. You would often tell people how I introduced you to certain music. She meant actually forcing her to sit down and listen to it. But the truth is the opposite. I would never have been the musician or person I am if it weren't for you. I would probably never have heard such music if it wasn't for the strength of your conviction that I should somehow create. My brother and I are men today because of you, and there will be generations to come from your grandchildren who will know who you were and what you wrote and what you stood for and indeed stood up for. And I also remember your father Cyril and your mother Kathleen Smythe of Attimas. I would like to end with a poem and a quick story that Brenda used to enjoy telling. The story concerns the mighty Robert Lowell, drunk and slurringly belligerent at a book reading Q&A. I can't do my mother's impression, but her impressions were wonderful and can't be recreated. But basically, a woman from the audience asked, "Mr. Lowell, where does your writing come from? Your poetry, where does it come from?" And Lowell replied, "From my balls, madam, from my balls." Interesting, says the woman. "And what colour ink do you use?" For the Union Dead. The old South Boston Aquarium stands in a Sahara of snow now. Its broken windows are boarded. The bronze weather-vane cod has lost half its scales. The airy tanks are dry. Once my nose crawled like a snail on the glass. My hand tingled to burst the bubbles drifting from the noses of the cowed, compliant fish. My hand draws back. I often sigh still for the dark, downward and vegetating kingdom of the fish and reptile. One morning, last March, I pressed against the new barbed and galvanized fence on the Boston Common. Behind their cage, yellow dinosaur steam shovels were grunting as they cropped up tons of mush and grass to gouge their underworld garage. Parking spaces luxuriate like civic sand piles in the heart of Boston. A girdle of orange, Puritan, pumpkin-coloured girders braces the tingling State House, shaking over the excavations, as it faces Colonel Shaw and his bell-cheeked Negro infantry on St. Gaudens' shaking Civil War relief, propped by a plank splint against the garage's earthquake. 2 months after marching through Boston, half the regiment was dead. At the dedication, William James could almost hear the bronze Negroes breathe. Their monument sticks like a fishbone in the city's throat. Its colonel is as lean as a compass needle. He has an angry, wren-like vigilance, a greyhound's gentle tautness. He seems to wince at pleasure and suffocate for privacy. He is out of bounds now. He rejoices in man's lovely, peculiar power to choose life and die. When he leads his black soldiers to death, he cannot bend his back. On 1,000 small-town New England greens, the old white churches hold their air of sparse, sincere rebellion. Frayed flags quilt the graveyards of the Grand Army of the Republic. The stone statues of the abstract Union soldier grow slimmer and younger each year. Wasp-waisted, they doze over muskets and muse through their sideburns. Shaw's father wanted no monument except the ditch, where his son's body was thrown and lost with his niggers. The ditch is nearer. There are no statues for the last war here. On Boylston Street, a commercial photograph shows Hiroshima boiling over a Mosler safe, the rock of ages that survived the blast. Space is nearer. When I crouch to my television set, the drained faces of Negro schoolchildren rise like balloons. Colonel Shaw is riding on his bubble. He waits for the blessed break. The aquarium is gone. Everywhere a giant finned car's nose forward like fish. A savage civility slides by on grease.